Hello. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for sticking around. Mark, thank you for joining us.
How are you?
To close out today's event. I guess we should start with the Sizzle Reel because I think that'll put everything in context. But before we get to the Sizzle Reel, so Karen, hold off on that. Tonight is the Hall of Fame ceremony. For those of you in the audience who are paying attention to SVG, we have a Hall of Fame every year. This is year number 12, 13, I can't remember now.
I don't know.
It's good, yeah. But we have 4 people who are related to the NBC family, if you will. One, a bit of a distant relative, in Gary Bettman. But then we also have Bob Costas, Mary Carrillo, and Dave Mazza. Now, for most people in this room, Dave Mazza is the one who's the nearest and dearest to our heart because he drives a lot of innovation. But in general, what's your thoughts on the 4 of them and what they kind of have meant to the NBC family?
Well, we could do a whole session on the 4 of them. We could do a whole session on Dave. I mean, he's, first of all, incredibly important to our company, incredibly important to, I think, many of us in the industry. His, not only his ability to innovate, but his desire to innovate and his skill in doing that and in coalescing groups of people around ideas is quite amazing. I mean, you know, I often say Dave could do a couple, you know, I think he could, like many people here, I'm sure could pull a Wonder Bread truck up to an event and make television out of it somehow. He's remarkable. But in terms of what he's done with us on international sport, with the Olympics, the number of pathways we have, what we send back here to the States in terms of video and in the different platforms, it's amazing. Add to that, he was really the driving force with what we've built in Stamford, what we call our International Broadcast Center, and our headquarters in Stamford. And it's not official, but the outdoor space we kind of affectionately call Mazza Plaza, just based on his drive and what we got there. So that's Dave, and NBC Sports wouldn't be who it is without what he's done over the last several decades. Mary Carrillo, you know, willing to try anything, a skilled broadcaster, a great interviewer, fun to do things, you know, on air. She's very adventurous. Always the glass is half full. I've told people that if I could live next to anyone in the world, it would be next to Mary because she's happy all the time. And she's great, whether it's in tennis or in the Olympics or just as an interviewer on different projects. Gary Bettman, who you know, I think has an underratedly difficult job being the commissioner of a sport that spans 2 countries, obviously multiple time zones, but dealing with multiple broadcasters, different systems of broadcasting, different issues as it relates to how the sport is treated in Canada and here in the States. He's a great partner. He wants to try new things all the time. He's pushing us very hard to do new things around player tracking and insertable ads and rotating boards and all kinds of things, so very deserving. And then Bob, there's no one like Bob. I mean, he's a brilliant interviewer. He's a great play-by-play caller of many sports, and baseball and NBA in particular, and he's a terrific host. And you know, we're very proud to be tied to all 4 of them.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So with that said, I know it's been a beyond busy year for the NBC family, so let's run the Sizzle Reel to kind of put it all into context of what you guys are up to.
Joint flag bearers, one from the north, one from the south, and one moment in Olympic history.
Every round for me is just an opportunity to go out there and do the best that I can do. I just gotta come out here and fight.
The capital of the country is the capital of the hockey playoffs. Yes! Yes!
There's no doubt, Tiger's back.
Thank you, Tiger!
You gotta keep fighting, because you saw what happened tonight. If you keep playing, you can beat anybody, no matter what the circumstances.
You can't script it any better than this. Sean White for the goal. One more hit. Will it be enough? 90 seconds. Oh! Yeah! Sean White takes the goal. Sean White, you're awesome.
Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football.
Tommy, let's go!
Antonio Brown does his typical Sunday Night Football thing.
Brady under pressure to the end zone. It is incomplete.
Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Can you believe this? He scored!
Scott Dixon, 5-time IndyCar champion.
Fulfilling a dream. It's Joey Logano who wins. He's just immortal. Justified as the Triple Crown winner.
That is amazing. Great year. Congratulations. As a Giants fan, that video breaks my heart. Watching the Eagles win. So let's put in this, I mean, there was so much going on there. Let's talk that week in February where you had the Super Bowl and the Olympics. And so from a management standpoint, going into that, the month and a half, 6 weeks before, how do you kind of keep track of all of those things? And I know you're big on putting great teams together. So sort of how did you what was those 6 weeks, 2 months like for you?
Checking all the expense reports. Now, we have, listen, we are all fortunate. We work in a place where we're actually able to move people. In that video, trying to capture some of the fan excitement around the events that we're part of. I mean, I think we're all fortunate to be doing something like that that actually motivates, moves, and brings out that emotion in people. A lot of that translates into our team, and we have a big team of people. Obviously with football and the Olympics, and they were tied together, separated by only 4 days this year. Throw in, it's on a different scale, but 7 days before the Super Bowl, we had the NHL All-Star Weekend, so we were a traveling circus for a long period of time. But the passion that our teams put into what they're building, first from the logistics, the planning, the coverage, and coverage plans is amazing. From a management point of view, it's about having great leaders, giving them authority, holding them accountable, having a smart plan going in, and the fact that they were all tied into 1 2-week period there, or a week period there, just meant the planning had to be all that much smarter and all that much more buttoned up. About 150, we had about 2,500 or so people, I think, over in Korea. So that was a lot. About 150 of us worked through the Super Bowl and left right after the Super Bowl to go straight to Korea. Some talent, some management, a lot of production personnel. So there was a lot of a crossover between the two. But from an Olympic point of view, we send 100 shipping containers in advance full of equipment, everything from equipment to tables and chairs to food, so that we are our own traveling entity.
So so walk me through the Super Bowl. That was an amazing game, right? So I mean, you must have been very happy with just the story that played out there as far as the number of touchdowns and amazing plays.
Yeah, we're always happy when the games are close. I mean, we all, the Super Bowl is always going to be a great big event and always going to do well, but when it's close, it's just that much more exciting because we're fans too.
Right. So then for the Olympics, again, I think you averaged 20 million viewers, so it did really well for the Winter Games, which is always a tricky one.
Yeah, the games, the often maligned Olympic Games, there's a rhythm to what the press does with the games, right? And leading up to the games, there's always going to be security problems, there's always going to be terrorism, there's always going to be, Chechnyan rebels coming over the mountains in Russia. Hotels are expensive. Traffic's going to be terrible, and then fortunately, more often than not, very little of that ever pans out to be the case. And once the athletes take the playing field, that's what we all talk about, and that's what we're there to document, is the incredible athletes of these young people who are doing really awesome things at probably the pinnacle of their athletic career and doing really incredible stuff. And so that's the fun part. The Olympics, Sunday Night Football will be the #1 rated show in television in primetime again for the 8th consecutive year, which continues to extend our record. The Olympics are treated as a special, but the Olympics would have been the highest rated show of the year. So while we're capturing Olympic fans and viewers both on television, on digital, through social media, when you accumulate them or just on television alone, it's still the largest audience every year.
So, Dave Mazza loves live Olympics. He hates anything that's live to tape because he says people, if you give someone 3 hours to do the edit, it's going to take them 3 hours. They're not going to get it done in an hour. So when you go live, you're just done, right? So I was surprised. I didn't expect to have so much live Olympics on the East Coast. So are you optimistic about the ratings for Tokyo and for also Beijing as far as, again, an uptick? Because it's really a lot of live, probably the most live content ever, honestly.
It will be, Tokyo will be the most live Olympics ever, just given the time zone, 13 hours difference. Beijing, we expect the same, and we, obviously, Pyeongchang had a similar live element. Yeah, the way the time zones work and our ability for events, where events get scheduled, gives us a great opportunity on the East Coast to have a lot of live in prime time, a lot of live in late night, and we learned in Pyeongchang we're actually shifting people's sleeping behaviors because they want to stick and watch more live Olympics. And then, so the same will take place in Tokyo. The schedules for all the sports aren't finalized through the federations, but we know that swimming will be live in prime time, gymnastics will be near live. It's a better package show, so you'll know it's tough to watch that live, so it'll be packaged in quick turnaround. So yeah, we're optimistic about Tokyo. Tokyo's also got a great mystique. We didn't really have that in South Korea. I mean, the awareness factor for the Olympics in South Korea was quite low. We got a nice boost from the North Koreans agreeing to come, and that really brought a political element to it and an awareness that the games were taking place that I think were helpful to the ratings.
Right, sure. So, and then from a production plan standpoint, because I know you also like production and you understand production, which is great. So the at-home stuff, how do you kind of see that expanding for Tokyo? Because it'll be the largest Olympics, more venues. So how do you kind of see your at-home plans?
Well, they will continue to expand. I mean, for two reasons. One, the technology is allowing for it, and what our colleagues, either in this room or around the industry, are doing that allows the technology to bring things back and to do them from afar and not have any issues around degradation of signal or latency or any of those things that we've been challenged with over time. Makes it easy for us to do more at home. It's still important to have certain groups and certain people on site and in the country of the games, but we'll be full at our campus in Stamford with probably roughly 1,200 people working there on the Olympics, and a likelihood of having to expand to a second facility. And we just, as a company, built a brand new production and administrative facility in Hialeah for Telemundo, and we'll probably
beautiful facility,
use their facility as well, certainly around the summer games, certainly around the Spanish language countries. The Spanish language population watches a lot of that on Telemundo in our portfolio.
When I went to Telemundo and I visited there, which is amazing, the facility, the constant theme that everybody said to me was, "Did you visit our old facility?" And I said, "No, I didn't." He's like, "Oh, you're lucky you didn't visit our old facility." So the new one is unbelievable.
Yeah, the other one was nearly uninhabitable. Yes. So a much-deserved and necessary upgrade.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the Sunday Night Football. So 8 years. So would you have ever expected it to be the #1 rated show, primetime show for 8 years? And why is it the #1 primetime show?
Well, start with the fact that it's great content. So having great content as a base is important. And second, I think our production team, and both in front of and behind the camera, does a fantastic job of telling a story, of making it welcoming to all kinds of viewers. And you can't be #1 in our business without being appealing to men, women, and children. And whether that's the type of camera work that is done, the type of production that is done that Fred Gaudelli and Drew Esikoff do to show the storyline, not just of the players and the teams, but the crowds and the cities, I think adds to that. And then what Al and Chris and Michelle do to make it accessible, to make it, not just about X's and O's, about storyline, about people, about what makes them interesting to fans. It's, a little bit of the Olympic playbook that was, our predecessors and led by Dick Ebersol did about that storytelling. And it's still a big part of the culture of NBC Sports, is how do we get people to care about things they wouldn't normally care about.
So Charlie Ebersol was here earlier today. kicked off this morning talking about the AAF, which will start the week after the Super Bowl. And he was making the point that there's a big audience drop-off because the NFL does such good ratings, that the ratings for the NFL are the combined of the other 4 leagues. So he kind of he's a little bullish, obviously, on seeing an opportunity there. So what do you see there as the opportunity for, I guess, spring football, for lack of a better word?
Well, I think Charlie's got his concept. Vince McMahon has his concept. I think there's a few other concepts floating out there. I mean, football is the biggest audience out there. We go through a few weeks here, where we had a lot of Saturday football and Sunday football. Now we have less Saturday football with college being gone, and while there is still Sunday football, what fills up that gap? It's some of the off-season golf tournaments that we're involved with. We do other things around, whether it's figure skating or skiing. The NBA and the NHL certainly take up more bandwidth in that space. I think my feeling is if the football's good and people care about what the product starts with the product is on the field, then they'll draw an audience. If it's not, and if it's gimmicky or if it's not, up to quality of what people are used to, whether it's at a collegiate level or a professional level, then I think it will be harder to draw an audience. But I wish him well. We're not part of the league with Charlie. I wish him well. He's obviously still in name. They're a big part of our family, and I hope that they do well. And if they're successful, it's good for sports.
Right. So so as far as where I was going to go, I've completely lost my train of thought. So esports, we had a session here with esports, which is another thing that's kind of popping up and very popular. So have you looked at the esports? Where do you see the esports fitting into your possible plans?
We look at it in a variety of ways. We've been partners and broadcast some of it and hosted some games. We've worked with Rocket League and Face It as a distribution partner. And we've had some success. We've worked a lot of it across our RSNs and then on NBC Sports Network. I think, and I overcaught the tail end of what these guys were talking about before, it's about participation, and it's about being in the moment, it's about community, it's about being there. I'm not sure it's a big television property as of yet, but I don't dismiss it as something that's important to the industry of gathering people and potentially selling tickets and selling games. For our company, I mean, the real people who are having great success there are the people who own the intellectual property, who have developed the games. Right. We're working across our company with Universal Pictures, and there's some intellectual property there that we think has some ability to translate into gaming, but it's really more falls into their side of the company in terms of creating that intellectual property. But I mean, that's the big win, and those publishers who have been able to do that are incredibly successful, and they're making an impact on what young people are doing and viewing.
Right. So we were over at the UK. We had an event at Old Trafford Stadium, and Barbara Slater, head of BBC, was talking about the crown jewel events, right, in the UK. And it's Wimbledon. It's not the Open anymore. And so I asked a question about esports, and would that become a focus? And she's like, well, our goal as a public broadcaster is to put our focus where the people are and what they want to watch. And then I didn't get the follow-up question, which would be, well, do you think that at some point this is, as these kids and young adults grow older, that this will be what they will want to watch? And then what's the impact on regular, traditional ball and stick sports? I mean, so have you thought about this at all, as far as the risk there, or what this might, or the opportunities? And
sure. I mean, anything that's share of voice, share of mind, share of time has an ability to deteriorate. I mean, we compete with anything that's taking people's time away from consuming our media or our sports properties. So yeah, we think a lot about it. But just flipping something on TV doesn't make it popular, or flipping something on a digital product doesn't make it successful. We better have a plan and figure out a way we're going to make some money from it, as opposed to just trying to put it on.
Right. Okay, so leaving aside some of the TV ratings things, and there was one story, I didn't see it coming, I will call it, for this year, which was Comcast snapping up the Sky and that whole interesting drama, which must have been really interesting for you. So can you kind of share any insights into that whole drama and how that played out? And was there anything that surprised you at any moment in the twists and the turns?
Well, just, our company has been built over time with acquisition, whether it was Comcast buying up other cable operators and MVPDs, or whether buying NBC Universal, or now buying Sky. We continue to acquire assets that have, smart, that are accretive to our bottom line and smart for our shareholders. So, adding Sky, which is a sort of a mirror image of what NBCU and Comcast is, they're both distribution and content, is a natural fit. It was good for us to expand our international footprint. We distribute a lot of product and content around the world. We didn't really own or have any distribution platforms. Add the Sky footprint of the UK, Italy, Germany to what's here in the States, and we're somewhere about 50 million customer interactions, on a monthly basis in terms of who we reach and are in business with. From a sports point of view, it's a really good opportunity. We have a lot of properties now that overlap with Premier League and the NFL, and certainly both big in the golf space. And we see a great opportunity to share content. We see a great opportunity to share talent. And in the future, we feel an opportunity to be able to work together on rights acquisitions.
Right. And I was, again, talking to Dave earlier. They have some really nice technical facilities over there. So I don't know if you had a chance to do the tour over there, but
I have.
They're all pretty cutting edge.
I think that they're a very innovative company and have not been afraid to disrupt themselves. And I think that's a lesson for us and a lesson for all of us, that we can stay the course, but we also need to not be afraid to disrupt ourselves. And I think they've done a very nice job of doing that. And, we've said we've been over there a few times, and they've been over here, and we're very kindred in spirits, and we feel it's a lot like talking to ourselves. We kind of can speak a shorthand already. They have a similar corporate culture that we have, and I think it's going to be a very successful collaboration.
Right. Now, obviously, they have embraced in a big way UHD and 4K in particular, and HDR. So, and I know that you guys have done some tests at the Olympics on the 1080p and 4K HDR. So what do you see as, that sort of opportunity to kind of learn from them? And obviously you may have access now to content, 4K HDR content. So where do you see this? People are puzzled over the whole 4K HDR thing and how this is going to shake out.
So we've done some of the Olympics. We've done a bunch with Notre Dame football. Dave Mazza has been really pushing us hard to continue to move quickly in that space. I mean, I think there's a variety of elements that come into play for us. Is what is the adoption at the MVPD level? What is the adoption at the consumer level? And then, what is the adoption as broadcast contemplates its changeover from where we sit today to ACSC 3.0, and what does that mean in terms of the ability to take these signals. We as a company have always made, I'd say, measured investments. We moved fairly quickly into HD. We did not move into 3D. Good move. Sometimes people move too fast. I think we will make measured investments in here. We have a lot of businesses between what we do in broadcast television in English and Spanish, and then what we do in cable universe, both in sports between NBC, SN, and our RSNs and Golf Channel, and then what we do in mostly scripted and event television around USA, Sci-Fi, Bravo, et cetera, and E. So it's a variety of live and scripted stuff. So we'll be measured, but we will continue to invest. I think we have to be careful. We are going to be careful not to overinvest before adoption rates seem to be getting to an acceptable level.
Right. And look, let's be clear, they have a satellite platform which makes deployment of a service a lot easier. And also there is a little bit of a BT versus Sky thing going on, which there's a competitive advantage or be a first mover kind of a thing. So probably if you go back to HD, until DirecTV or whatever says, hey, we're going to launch 50 channels, I mean, that's how it kind of happened here, right? Once DirecTV did that, then the cable guys said, okay.
They tend to, with their ease of deployment, tend to move the needle.
Right. Okay, so then that leads us to the other big question of not seeing it coming is what's still out there, the big looming question that everybody wants to know about, which is the RSN situation. that Disney has to divest. So when I talk to people in here and other people, we can't really figure out, let alone what might happen, that's one thing, but how it could happen. Because some people tell me, no, they got to sell the whole thing as a bundle. No, they may spin off some of them. They may spin off the Yes Network, and then they buy them back, and then they make some money, and Rupert's really looks smart. So first, where are you guys?
All of those things are possible.
Yes, okay, so what do you think is going to happen? Handicap? No. So well, walk me through, did you guys evaluate this at all? Was it ever a consideration? You have enough RSNs as it is, but did you want more? Or?
We have RSNs that are strategically important for our company. They're in cities where we have vertical integration, oftentimes with our cable brethren, and then oftentimes with owned and operated television stations as well. So that kind of vertical integration for us is part of our strategy and why Comcast got into the RSN business to begin with. We looked to the level we were allowed to look by NDAs, and Disney dictated that. We looked at at those RSNs. Some that were in our cable footprints were interesting. Many were outside of our cable footprints. The likelihood that the government would have been interested in us getting more that were inside of our cable footprint, we think, was unlikely. So we were never really serious bidders once the Fox made the decision to sell the bulk of their company, Sans Sky, to Disney. So we were not. It seems, that they do have this 90-day window after the close of their deal that they're required to divest the RSNs. My understanding is they likely have the ability to extend that another 90 days. I don't know that they would be forced to sell them to a single buyer if there is no single buyer. And it appears that there are various values of different RSNs to different groups. So my expectation is that what gets sold will end up, unless Fox comes back at what would be a discount from what they sold it at, that the likelihood is it gets sold to multiple buyers.
Okay, so yesterday I saw a report that one of those buyers potentially is, as we all saw, Ice Cube came out and said that he may want to get in the RSN business. So I asked this question of Sean McManus back at NEB New York. So generically, the pros and cons of the RSN market. Why would Ice Cube want to buy an RSN, or why would he not want to buy an RSN?
Gives them distribution for the Big Three basketball tournament.
That's true, okay. Yeah.
I don't know why Ice Cube would want to buy those. I think he's done. I actually think
Law and Order residuals obviously pay very well for this.
No, that's not Ice Cube. That's LL Cool J.
Sorry.
Come on.
Oh, Cool J.
And Ice-T.
Ice-T.
We gotta get you some new Ice.
I got my ices mixed up.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly why he would, but he's an astute business guy. I've met with him around the Big Three tournament, talked to him. He's a smart guy. He's an astute business guy. I'm sure he wanted to look at what the model is and whether it would be a way to make money. The RSN business in general right now is a good business for us. We're continue to grow our profitability, albeit at a much smaller, lower pace than we maybe had historically. Rights fees, have continued to grow. Distribution and deals with cable operators or satellite providers or the VMVPDs have become more and more challenging and not growing at the same rate that maybe the rights fees are. So, as people leave the current pay TV system, that's going to make it a business that we have to continue to reimagine. So I think that's part of what some of these people who are now kicking the tires on these networks are realizing once they can actually dig in and see the books, that it's, what you see on the screen and what we all do every day is interesting and is exciting, and we all get intoxicated by it. But private equity guys tend to look at the numbers.
Well, so speaking of reimagining, so Amazon also is obviously potentially in play, although who knows how big their bid was. But how do you think an Amazon would reimagine an RSN business?
I think they would have to be willing to deficit spend a significant amount if they want to change the distribution platform. And the teams would have certain consent, and there's certain, obviously, deals in place. If they were to say, as deals were to come up with either the teams and or the distributors, say that we were going to take this only to a direct-to-consumer model, I think they'd have to be comfortable that the certainty of the very large fees that the networks get from cable operators today, that they'd have to be comfortable that it might take them a long time to make that back. I don't know their strategy. I don't know if they're serious or not about looking at it, but short of making that sort of reimagined change, or making it some sort of simulcast between direct-to-consumer, but then you come into challenges with why would the cable operators want to continue to support it at the same level.
Right. So before I let you go, the last topic, the digital and OTT and the traditional network model. I mean, the Olympics, I mean, you guys did a ton of content out there to the world. So what do you see as the relationship between the digital side and the OTT side and the traditional broadcast side and the network fees and concerns of cord cutting? And are you enabling cord cutting by giving them great OTT experience? How do you kind of see this all sorting out? Because this probably keeps you up at night all the time.
It does. That's kind of a billion-dollar question. So, they're all intertwined in our view. So first you have to either acquire or create great content. It starts with that. So once we do that, the question is what's the best way to distribute it to both maximize the viewership or the audience and be able to monetize it back. Every property is slightly different. Every property, we have different deals or different sets of rights. We think that the whole world kind of works together, and that having a company that has broadcast television, cable television, and direct-to-consumer distribution is the future for us. Others are doing similar, ESPN with ESPN Plus. They don't use ABC the same way we use NBC, but they still have big, broad, linear distribution. And then there's the pure play OTT guys like DAZN or others that may come to market. And right now they're kind of picking around the edges, and I think the Facebooks and Googles and Amazons are sort of in the same bait, picking around the edges. They're taking what we all produce and maybe repackaging it or using it in a different way, whether it's an RSN production or a host feed from another country. They're all to be taken seriously as competitors, and we look at every sport and every property as its own distribution opportunity. The beautiful thing for us with the Olympics is that we own the right to every technology known today or invented between now and the year 2032. So whatever form of media is going to be consumed, we're going to use it, try it, continue to innovate. It's a big charge for Dave and his team and Jim Bell and Gary Zinkel and their teams. So having those complete sets of rights allows us to be more innovative in investment spend, especially with the long time horizon on our deal.
Right. So the last question, as far as obviously this is a crowd that always likes to know about the general momentum of the sports industry. The ratings for you guys across the board, really good. I think this, fan engagement with sports on TV and over social media platforms is on the rise. So sports is still connecting, and then there's the esports, which is connecting in a different way. So in general, what's the mood as far as the future of sports as it relates to in a competitive landscape with Netflix and Amazon?
I think we're, nothing new here. We're seeing that live matters. People are interested in that. Our Sunday night football numbers are up 7% year on year. Our Wednesday night hockey is up 2 or 3% year on year. Our golf numbers were up. Thank you, Tiger. Year on year. There is a lot of engagement. Social media helps and it hurts. I mean, there's a lot of people who follow our sports without ever watching our telecast because you're able to see so much through social media. We didn't really talk, but betting, I think, has a chance to be something that further engages people in the audience and less about what people bet in terms of, the line on a game, but prop bets and in-game betting. I think it's a real opportunity to increase and take advantage and grow that fan engagement. So we're bullish. We're big investors. The company has been incredibly supportive of us in the sports division and continued to allow us to invest in properties and invest in the innovation around production. And we're just trying to compete with everyone else out there.
And sorry, last question. 2019 World Cup, we got the Telemundo. We didn't even talk about the World Cup. That's why I had to ask this. So you're doing 52 games on Telemundo for the Women's World Cup. Again, you had the World Cup, you had the Olympics, and you had the Super Bowl. So real quick, the World Cup on Telemundo, how that's performing, and what are the opportunities there?
It was really powerful for Telemundo. Telemundo's in a great transition. Their primetime lineup has really done well and grown and closed the gap between with the Hispanic audiences between them and Univision. We've both own and operate 29 affiliates now, I think, in Telemundo, broadcast affiliates, investing a lot in news in the Hispanic marketplace. And I think that has brought a lot of success to Telemundo. The World Cup was another cog in that. We think having the World Cup along with those other investments will be important as we go into retransmission consent discussions with cable operators and MVPDs for Telemundo. The big learning for me, and I think for my colleagues and I, the production of the World Cup, of the biggest multi-day event in the world, or one of them certainly, was a great collaboration between Telemundo and NBC Sports. And whether from the technical team, our Olympic group put a lot of time and energy into helping them map out how to bring the games from the World Cup from Russia back to the States, from multiple cities in Russia. So the collaboration, it's a hallmark of our company. I think that'll now translate, as we talked a minute ago, about to Sky. But the tie between what NBC Sports and Telemundo is doing in sports, I think, was really showcased there, and we'll do it again this summer from Paris with the Women's World Cup, and then on into the future with Copa America and other big global soccer events that Telemundo continues to invest in.
It never stops. So thank you so much, Mark, for your time and for your extra time. And again, please, round of applause for Mark Lazarus.